The wind came first. IT ripped through the mountain pass like a living thing, screaming through pine and stone, flinging snow sideways until the world dissolved into white chaos. In that storm, life did not ask permission to end. It simply did. Elias Boone felt it before he saw it. His axe was raised mid-swing, muscles tight, breath steady when something in the air shifted. Not sound, not sight, a pressure, a wrongness. 15 winters alone in the northern frontier had sharpened his instincts beyond reason. The forest spoke to him now in silence, and silence was shouting. He lowered the axe slowly. Down the slope, barely visible through the curtain of snow, a dark shape moved, and then collapsed. Elias stood frozen for a heartbeat. He could turn back. The cabin was warm. The fire was fed. Survival in this land depended on knowing when not to interfere. The mountains punished mercy. Then the wind carried something fragile across the storm, that a broken sob. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to prove there was still breath in that body. Elias swore under his breath and started downhill. Each step was a fight. Snow swallowed his boots to the knee. The cold gnawed through wool and leather, biting into old scars that never truly healed. When he reached the fallen figure, he saw immediately that this was no hunter, no drifter hardened by the wild. She was young, too young for this place. Dark hair clung to her face in wet strands. Her dress was torn, thin, useless against the cold. Her hands shook violently as she tried to push herself up again, slipping in blood-stained snow. And beneath the layers of desperation, beneath the filth and fear, there was a truth that stopped Elias's breath. She was pregnant. Her eyes found his boots first, then slowly traveled up to his face. There was no fear in them. Fear had already burned out. What remained was exhaustion so deep it bordered on peace. Her lips moved. "I can't." The rest vanished into the wind. Elias shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders before his mind could object. She flinched at the sudden warmth, then sagged forward, forehead pressing weakly against his chest. The weight of her nearly knocked him back. It wasn't just her body. It was the responsibility, the risk, the past he had buried under years of snow and solitude. He hesitated only long enough to curse fate. Then he lifted her into his arms and turned toward the cabin. The storm followed them, angry and relentless, as if offended that something had been taken from IT. By the time Elias kicked the cabin door shut, his beard was crusted with ice and his arms burned from the effort. He laid her gently on the narrow bed near the hearth and moved with practiced urgency. Fire, water, blankets, the cabin filled with heat and shadow. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Blood soaked the hem of what remained of her dress, dark and terrifying against pale skin. Elias swallowed hard. He had seen blood like this before, on battlefields, in burned villages, in places where hope went to die. He cleaned the wound on her leg first. A deep gash, badly infected, likely from barbed wire or broken timber. Then her hands, raw and cracked. Then her face, streaked with dirt and tears frozen mid-fall. She stirred as the warmth reached her core. "No," she whispered, eyes fluttering open. Panic surged briefly, weak but sharp. "Please don't send me back." Elias stilled. "Back where?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then a single word escaped her, heavy as a grave. "My brother." The way she said it, like a curse, like a wound, told him everything and nothing at once. "You're safe," Elias said, though the word felt dangerous in his mouth. "Storm won't let anyone travel tonight." Her breathing eased slightly. Exhaustion reclaimed her. She slipped back into unconsciousness with tears drying on her lashes. Elias sat by the fire long after he finished tending her. The flames crackled softly, casting light on the rough walls, the scars on his hands, the quiet life he had built to avoid exactly this. He had buried a wife once, a child too small for a coffin. He had learned the cost of loving in a cruel world. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a fragile life fought to stay. Morning came reluctantly. The storm had passed, leaving behind a frozen stillness so complete it felt unreal. Elias rose stiffly and checked on her before anything else. She was awake now, propped slightly against the wall, eyes alert despite the pain etched into her face. She watched him like a trapped animal watches an unfamiliar kindness. He set a bowl of broth beside her. She hesitated before taking it, fingers shaking. "What's your name?" he asked. She swallowed carefully before answering. "Clara." "Elias." She nodded, committing it to memory. They sat in silence while she drank. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was heavy, respectful. Outside, sunlight glittered off snow-laden trees. Inside, something fragile was beginning to thaw. "Why were you out there?" Elias asked finally that Clara's gaze dropped to her hands. "He sold me," she said. The words were flat. Dead. Like she had repeated them so many times they no longer hurt in the same way. He said it was the only way to pay his debts. "Promised I'd be taken care of." "Promised." Her fingers curled into the blanket. "When I told him I was with child, he said that made me more valuable." Elias's jaw tightened. The fire popped sharply. "I ran," she continued. "I didn't know where. I just ran until my legs stopped working." "You were bleeding," Elias said. She nodded. "I fell. Kept getting up. Then I couldn't anymore." Silence settled again. "You can stay," Elias said at last. She looked up sharply. "I can't pay you." "I'm not asking." Her eyes searched his face for cruelty, for expectation, for the price that always came later. She found none, only a man worn thin by loss and weather. "They'll look for me," she whispered. "Let them," Elias said. That night, as Clara slept under layers of blankets, Elias stood outside the cabin and stared into the endless trees. He knew what taking her in meant. Men like her brother didn't forgive lost profit. The frontier remembered blood. But for the first time in years, the silence around him felt less like safety and more like waiting. And somewhere deep beneath the snow and scars, something long buried inside, Elias Boone stirred, fragile and dangerous as hope. The storm did not truly leave. It only loosened its grip. Days passed beneath a low, iron sky, the kind that pressed down on the land and made every sound carry too far. Snow creaked underfoot. Trees groaned in the cold. Elias rose before dawn each morning, feeding the fire, checking the traps, measuring the world the way a man does when he expects it to turn on him. Clara healed slowly. The gash on her leg closed in angry stages, red and swollen, before finally easing into something that looked like a scar in the making. She spent most of her time near the hearth, wrapped in blankets, watching Elias with a quiet attentiveness that never fully relaxed. She moved carefully, as if any wrong step might cost her the fragile shelter she had found. They spoke little. When they did, it was about practical things. Water levels, pain, the baby's movements, the weather. Words were tools, not comforts, and both of them were skilled in silence. Yet trust crept in anyway that it came in small ways. Elias noticed how she always waited until he had eaten before touching her own food. How she flinched at sudden movements, but not at his presence. How she began humming softly while stirring broth, a tune worn smooth by memory point one afternoon. While Elias repaired a broken sled runner, Clara stepped outside for the first time since the storm. The cold bit in her cheeks, but she stood anyway, eyes lifted to the mountains like someone seeing freedom through pain. "They're beautiful," she said quietly. "They kill careless people," Elias replied. She smiled faintly. "So does everything else." The smile lingered with him long after she returned inside. Nature tested them without mercy that a pack of wolves circled the cabin one night, their howls threading through the darkness like knives. Elias stood watch until dawn, rifle in hand, while Clara lay awake, one hand pressed protectively over her belly, counting breaths instead of time. Food grew scarce. Traps came back empty more often than not. Elias began stretching meals, pretending he wasn't hungry, pushing extra portions toward Clara without comment. She noticed, said nothing, ate slowly, guilt shadowing every bite. Then one morning he found the tracks, boot prints, fresh, deliberate. Men, they cut through the tree line with purpose, circling the cabin just enough to know someone was there. Elias crouched beside them, fingers brushing the snow, reading the story it told. Three men. One limping slightly, one heavy, one who moved like he knew how to hunt people. Clara felt it before he told her. She always did. They're close, she said, voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Yes. Because of me. Elias didn't answer. He loaded the rifle, checked the door, reinforced the window shutters. The cabin had withstood storms. Men were another matter. That night, the past came knocking to. It wasn't fists on wood. It was a voice drifting through the trees, oily and familiar. Clara, it called softly. Come on now. I just want to talk. She went pale. That's him, she whispered. Elias felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. Her brother stepped into the clearing, lantern held high. He was thinner than she described, desperation etched into his face, greed barely hidden behind a crooked smile. Two men flanked him, shadows with guns. You made a mess, sister, he said lightly. Ran off with valuable property. Not kind. She's not property, Elias said from the doorway. The brother laughed. Everyone is out here. The tension stretched tight enough to snap. Snow crunched. Guns shifted. Breath clouded. You don't know what you're protecting, the brother warned. Debt doesn't disappear. It transfers. Clara stepped forward before Elias could stop her. I won't go back, she said. Not with you. Not ever. Her brother's smile faded. Something ugly surfaced. Elias raised the rifle. Silence exploded into motion. A shot rang out. Wood splintered. Clara screamed as Elias pulled her back inside. The door slammed. The world narrowed to heartbeat and breath and survival. The men tried the windows first, then the door. Elias fired once, twice, forcing them back. Smoke filled the cabin. The baby kicked hard against Clara's ribs as she sank to the floor, clutching her belly. Hours passed like lifetimes. When the men finally withdrew, it wasn't victory. It was delay. They would return. With more men. Less patience. Elias packed through the night. At dawn, they left the cabin behind. Clara leaned heavily on him as they moved into the trees, the smoke from the hearth fading into memory. She looked back once, eyes wet but resolute. I'm sorry, she whispered. Elias shook his head. So am I. The wilderness swallowed them. Each step forward pulled them deeper into danger, but also into something neither had named yet. A bond forged not by words, but by shared risk. Shared choice. Behind them, the cabin stood empty. Waiting, ahead of them, the world waited too. The forest closed behind them like a door that could not be reopened. Snow fell again. Not in rage this time, but in a slow, steady hush, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Elias led the way through narrow passes and frozen ravines, places he had learned during years of hiding from memories he no longer wished to carry. Clara followed, her steps careful, one hand always resting on her belly, the other gripping his coat when the ground grew uncertain. They did not speak. Words would not change what waited for them. That be why the second night. The pain began. Clara woke Elias with a sound that cut through the dark sharper than any gunshot. He rolled to his knees beside her, heart hammering, as she gripped his sleeve with white-knuckled strength. Her breath came in broken waves. Fear flickered across her face, quickly smothered by determination. It's too early, she whispered. Isn't it? Elias didn't know. He only knew they could not keep moving. He built a fire in a hollow between rocks, shielding it from the wind, and laid her down on pine boughs and blankets. Snow melted against the heat, steam rising like spirits into the night. Clara's cries were soft, swallowed by the forest. But each one tore through Elias like a blade. He had delivered calves. He had closed wounds. He had held dying men as the light left their eyes. This was different. Time lost meaning. There was only pain and breath and the raw miracle of life forcing its way into a cruel world. Elias spoke quietly, not with instructions, but with presence. He stayed. He did not turn away. When the child finally came, it did not cry at first. Elias's heart stopped. Then a thin, defiant wail pierced the cold air, small and furious, refusing to surrender. Clara laughed through tears. Elias sank back on his heels, shaking, as he wrapped the child in cloth and placed the tiny, wriggling weight against her chest at a daughter. The forest bore witness in silence. Dawn found them exhausted and alive. They did not have long. Tracks appeared by mid-morning. Fresh, careless. Men who believed they were hunting prey already broken. Elias knew there would be no more running. He left Clara and the child hidden beneath fallen branches and snow, the fire carefully smothered. She caught his hand as he turned away. "Come back," she said. He nodded, though promises felt dangerous. The confrontation was short and brutal. Shots echoed through the trees. Snow exploded. Elias moved with the calm of a man who had already lost everything once and would not lose again. One man fell. Another fled wounded. The brother stood frozen, recognition and terror twisting his face. "You chose this," Elias said, voice flat. The brother raised his gun. His hand shook. Elias fired. When the silence returned, it was final. He buried the bodies before nightfall, not out of mercy, but necessity. The earth took them without comment. By the time he returned, Clara was rocking the child, humming that same quiet tune. She looked up, searching his face. "It's over," he said. She closed her eyes and breathed. They did not go back to the cabin. Spring found them farther south, where the snow softened and the land allowed roots. Elias built a new home with slower hands and a fuller heart. Clara learned the rhythm of the land. The child learned the sound of safety in the wind. Some nights, Elias woke from dreams of blood and fire. Clara woke too, laying the baby between them, a living bridge over old wounds. They were not untouched by loss. They were not whole in the way stories pretend, but they were together. Years later, smoke rose from a cabin where laughter lived. A child ran through tall grass, fearless. Two broken people stood side by side, watching something better grow. And if this story found you, if you have ever been betrayed, abandoned, or forced to choose between survival and compassion, remember this. Family is not always born from blood. Sometimes it is born from the courage to stay when running would be easier. And in the harshest wilderness, love can still find a way to live.